I'm an immigration reporter in France. And although I'm working with Agence France-Presse, which is a pretty old-school international newswire agency, I believe that citizen journalism is the most promising way to rejuvenate our troubled industry. I discovered that by accident in 2008. I was returning from Washington, D.C., where I had covered for 2 years the World Bank and the IMF. President Obama was just elected that month, and the first thing my editor, my first assignment that day, was to go to the suburb and ask the teens living there how they felt about it. When I'm speaking of the suburbs of Paris, I'm not speaking about this. Versailles, which is the suburbs of 17th century Paris. I'm speaking of Clichy-sous-Bois, which is probably France's most disadvantaged poor city, located 10 miles north of Paris, largely populated by immigrants, Muslim immigrants from African descent, plagued by unemployment and discrimination. Most of you may not know it, but actually you've already heard of Clichy-sous-Bois. It's in this very city that started the riots that you watch on CNN in October 2005. Teens burning cars to protest against the lack of integration of immigrant communities in France and profiling in law enforcement. At the origin of these events was a tragedy that is still ingrained in the memory of a whole generation of young immigrants in France. The death of Zied et Bouna, 2 kids from Clichy-sous-Bois, who died electrified in a power station because they were running out of a police control. Paris is just not only the city of romance and the Eiffel Tower. And for those of you who are more familiar with the French capital, the suburbs of Paris may conjure images you've seen through the windows of the train that take you from Charles de Gaulle Airport to central Paris. Poor, demolished, sometimes overpopulated projects. But behind these faces, behind these walls, there are faces. Faces of neglected French citizens that actually, and counterintuitively, might be the only chance of my tired country to cope with aging, lack of innovation, and fiscal constraints. Why? Because 40% of them are less than 25 years old, 65% are from foreign descent, which gives them a unique perspective on the world, and they can vote. Most of them, you don't know them, but they don't know you neither. They also see you through windows and screens, foreigners riding the train, the dirty train, or rich people they see on TV, living better life than their own. They don't know you here in New York City, but they actually don't know me neither. Paris is only a couple of miles away from where they live, but it's another country to them. And what they see of it is enough to make them sick. Former President Sarkozy calling them scum that need to be erased, mostly white journalists only visiting their neighborhood when they're burning, and for the rest of the time trapping them in a ghetto of stereotypes. So that's why in 2010, with 12 journalists from AFP, we decided to give these faces a voice. We look at what we had beside a very powerful media, supportive boss, and great load of energy. We had Facebook pages, we had Twitter accounts. That was 2 years before the French presidential election of May 2012. So we decided to take advantage of this strategic time frame to report on everything that was not the traditional suburban ghetto narrative, which is crime, so-called welfare queens, or so-called surge in Islamic fundamentalism. We discovered amazing stories. We discovered people we did not know. This young novelist, who made a name for himself on the street before hitting the shelves of Central Paris bookshop. Enthusiastic young voters who were running around their neighborhoods to get people registered before the election. Most of these stories, we found them through social networks. And one day, which was a couple of weeks before the election, we encountered the most incredible journalistic coincidence. The very same incident that happened 5 years before, which was an accident involving two teens riding a motorcycle to escape the police and got hurt by the police car. The very same incident happened again in the very same city, which is named Villiers-le-Bel. This was on a Saturday night. I sent two of my best reporters on the scene, and while they were en route, I ran to the office and searched frantically on Twitter for witnesses of the event. Found some, and when my reporters got there, we managed to put them in touch with the kids directly, and together, because they gave them access to their otherwise inaccessible neighborhood, they managed to get the story right. They managed to tell a better story, a more balanced story, than the story that was told 5 years before by our colleagues who were mostly relying on police sources. And while 5 years before, riots erupted in that city, Villiers-le-Bel, nothing happened that time. It's always difficult to make comparison because there's such complicated circumstances and various parameters. But the story we told was fair, the anger was diffused. So at the crossroad of all these stories is citizen journalism, which is the way, the possibility given to ordinary citizens to report directly about their situation, their experience, and their environment. So that's why now I want to go forward and create a dedicated platform, which is going to be on a smartphone, for example, to put directly in touch these primary correspondents with us in the mainstream media. This tool will be replicable everywhere there is a need to reconcile mainstream media with the lost segment of their audience, so that the citizen, every citizen, can finally see truth in the media and start writing their story alongside it. Thank you.